on Syria, with Secretary Kerry meeting with Vladimir Putin, I mean, State Department Secretary Kerry himself will say, Syria has broken every single diplomatic agreement that the U.S. has helped to broker, even those that Russia has tried to midwife and agree to on its own behalf. So why does the administration put any faith in trying to negotiate with Putin, given that he has given absolutely no reason for no good faith effort thus far?
Well, let me break that apart. Yes, it is true that Assad has time and time again broken commitments that either they had made or Russia had made on their behalf. I think that would explain why, just one example, or one reason, why Secretary Kerry is not in Damascus negotiating with President Assad right now. It's not worth the time. Setting aside the morally reprehensible actions that he's undertaken in the last several years. What's true of the Russians? Well, so what we have seen from the Russians has been intermittent. Russia did act constructively in helping to stand up the cessation of hostilities. And for the first several weeks that was in effect, that did mitigate significant security concerns inside of Syria. It did open the door for extensive humanitarian relief to be provided to innocent Syrians who'd been suffering for a long time. The point is, we know that the Russian government has influence with the Assad regime in a way that can have a tangible impact on the ground. It's just a matter of President Putin deciding whether or not he cares enough about his own integrity to use it. And that's the question that they face. There's also a question related not just to their influence with the Assad regime, but also to their own national security concerns. There's a significant extremist threat inside of Syria. We've talked about the risks associated with Russia walking into a quagmire. And that could have the potential of enhancing the risk back home. So the incentives are pretty clear for the Russians. Our willingness to work with them effectively on shared interests is pretty clear. That's why you hear me say that the time has come for Russia to decide whether or not they're going to focus on the kinds of solutions that will address the situation in Syria and address the significant threat that the Russians face back home.
So just a few weeks of compliance under the cessation of hostilities is a reason to continue. I mean, we then saw the regime break that cessation of hostilities. So it was, as you just said, just a few weeks of result that you're saying is enough to stand on there. I mean, what is the consequence to Russia? Will the U.S. continue to provide diplomatic cover or political cover with continuing to say we're going to keep trying to get them to do the right thing here?
Well, listen, I think with the several weeks of the overperformance of the cessation of hostilities, if you will, demonstrate that Russia has the capacity to use that influence with the Assad regime. They just have to decide whether or not they want to use it. So that's the illustration that I'm trying to provide here. I'm not suggesting that this means that they can be necessarily counted on to keep a commitment. I'm suggesting that is an illustration that they have the capacity to keep that commitment.
Yeah. And then yesterday, an appointee, the President Obama named Jeff Shell to the Broadcasting Board of Governors, was briefly detained and then deported from Russia. This is just a string of recent incidents where American diplomats and personnel have been harassed, high-profile incidents. Is this something that the President would like Secretary Kerry to raise in the meeting? And I mean, given the harassment of Americans, that doesn't set a good table for the U.S. to go in and negotiate with Russia right now if they feel that willing to assault American diplomats in the street.
Well, I can't speak to any individual case. and I'll let my colleagues at the State Department provide a readout of Secretary Kerry's discussions with leaders in Russia. I'll just say in general, as it relates to U.S. diplomats, that we regularly remind leaders in countries around the world where our diplomats are stationed that those countries have a responsibility. They have made a commitment to ensure the safety and security of U.S. diplomats that are serving around the world. We expect every country, including Russia, to live up to that commitment.
Is the president aware that Jeff Shell was detained and deported yesterday?
Again, I'm just not in a position to speak to any individual cases. The president is certainly aware of specific concerns about mistreatment of U.S. diplomats in Russia.
And then another